started here then. Claire and Tibet, it's lovely to have you. And I think most everyone has participated in one of these in-depths before, but this is really meant to be able to help build the knowledge base of the OpenTEAM community in a way that fosters coherence and collaboration so that we can better serve our diverse and ever-growing membership. So today, I think we're really excited to hear from Claire and Tibet about the potential to use Hylo as a way to organize and help connect our growing membership through an online platform. So with that, I'm just going to hand it over to you. I think you should be able to share your screen, and usually we have about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So go for it. See your screen. And you're on mute.
Okay. You see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. I'm going through this deck that Tibet actually created. I've never looked at it before this moment, so it's one of those fun games. Battle decks, if anyone's ever played that. So we're here today to talk about Hylo. Hylo is a collaboration app. We call it the social coordination platform for a thriving planet. It is a web and mobile app with iOS and Android versions. And it's been around for about 5 years, actually. And Terran Collective, which is the group that Tibet and I represent, has recently taken over stewardship of this project, which is now an open source project. So we're going to get into all of that good stuff. So our mission at Terran is to amplify cooperation among people regenerating our communities and our planet. We are fully all in on the regenerative movement. We are in love with regenerative agriculture, and we are dedicated to helping the people doing this work in all kinds of different ways have the tools they need to do the things that call to their care. So when we accepted stewardship of Hylo, we did that because we saw this tool as a critical piece of the infrastructure that we need for people to be able to scale the cooperation that we need at this moment in time to transition our world to a regenerative world. Right, and so technology is a really big piece of that transition. And it's not the main thing. What really matters is what we do in the ground, in the soil, and with each other face to face. But technology is a really critical piece of how we do that. And we really want our technology to be in service to thriving and in service to creating this culture of stewardship. And a typical tech platform that's built with venture capital and is built to maximize profit and maybe sells user data and things like that, a platform like that is not going to get us where we need to go. And that's why we really believe that a new platform is needed, such as Hylo, to really help people coordinate in a system that isn't actually at odds with that very cooperation through its exploitation of its own users. So there's this arc that we see Hylo fulfilling as a platform for communities to come together and achieve their goals. First of all, we really think it's important for communities to build trust and build strong relationships with each other. We need to put the trust back into everything we do that has been really hurt by a lot of things in the modern world driving us apart. We need to come back together, and our tech tools can help us do that. And then once we have these trusting relationships, we're interacting with each other. On Hylo, we're maybe fulfilling asks and offers for each other and coming through and taking care of our community. And that's how we build trust. The next thing is sense making. So our ability to, as a group of people, agree on what is right and what is true and what is needed in any moment. And that's things like having a geographic map where you can see where different efforts are happening. having a map of relationships so that you can see where resources are flowing. Because once you have really good information that people agree on, then you can make effective decisions together. So that collective decision making is the direction we want to take Hylo, building actual governance tools into this so that communities can take all that information and then make collective decisions together on how they act, coordinating impactful action, how they allocate resources, and actually translating this coherence into on the ground, real world impact. Okay, so some things about Hylo, some more background. Like I said, this platform is about 5 years old. It was started as a traditional tech for-profit platform, and it was actually sold at the beginning of 2020 to Hylo, the makers of the decentralized internet architecture Holochain. And they really wanted, it's a really nice looking app, and they actually just wanted to use the front end components as parts to build stuff within the Hylo ecosystem. And they were just going to do nothing with the legacy app and existing user base and existing databases, but through a really awesome partnership that was brokered by the original founders, Hylo and Terran made an agreement that Terran could take on stewardship of this. So Hylo open sourced it. They gave us the license to improve Hylo, to add on to it, to build a business around it, whatever, in perpetuity. And they also gave us the trademark to Hylo. So right now we are the stewards of Hylo, and we're in partnership with Hylo about it because we both agree that technology can be in service to a better world. And one of our goals with that partnership is that when the Holochain ecosystem is ready for mainstream adoption, we would love to decentralize the architecture of Hylo and have it be running on Holochain. And that would achieve so many different goals that this ecosystem values, such as like member sovereignty over their own data. But the way that we're running Hylo now, it is a nonprofit. We are running on donations and grants, as well as contracts from partners that want to see Hylo add different features that are for the benefit of everyone using it. It is open source, will always be open source and free to use. And we really see this as a tech commons. We want this amazing community space that we build to be governed by all of the stakeholders. And that includes the people using it, the people building it, the communities on the ground benefiting from it. All of them are welcome at the table here to steer the direction of this tool, because this is meant to be for the maximum utility of the community. Here are some, speaking of values, here are the values that are behind how we build Hylo. Long-term thinking, building this with these relationships in mind, transparency in our decisions, interoperability, which is really huge for this group. So we're very excited to be chatting with OpenTEAM. Sovereignty over members' own data, inclusion, and then collective stewardship. So those are some critical things and very different values from your typical tech platform. This is just a glance at the interface, and Tibet is going to do a demo next and then get into the architecture. But I maybe have a few more slides here. By regional coordination, I think you guys all understand why that is critical. We ultimately want Hylo to facilitate that because we really believe that the bioregion is like a natural polity or natural community that's defined by the landscape. And if we can start to see what's happening in our own bioregion and then making decisions with the other people of our bioregion, then we can effectively steward our own landscapes. And so that's the direction we'd really like to see communities going and farmers going in that direction, like making decisions on behalf of the watershed and the forests beyond our own boundaries, but thinking a little bit bigger about the membrane of our stewardship. Let's see. Not sure how many more slides there are here.
Well, the next ones are all about the future. So maybe I can do the demo now, and then we can come back to our roadmap and what's coming next.
Perfect. Okay, over to you, Tibet.
Cool. Thanks, Claire. I think you have to stop before I can share. Cool. So here is almost exactly the screenshot that Claire was showing. So this is a community in Hylo called Building Hylo, which is where we are actually discussing the process of the design and development of Hylo, and we'd be happy to invite any of you to this community that want to kind of follow along in that process or participate in it. As you can see, the kind of basic interface of Hylo right now, as it stands today, is a lot like a Facebook group with a stream here in the middle of different posts. I actually noticed right before this that this person had an idea that is something we're already working on. So I can just add a comment right now. So yeah, you can have conversations here. You can tag people and bring them into the conversation. Like if I start typing someone's name, it'll pull up people that I might want to tag in the conversation. If I go back to the top, you can see, or actually I'll just jump into creating a post. You can see we have different post types. This is kind of one way that we're a bit different than other platforms. Right now there's requests and offers and resources. And there's also projects and events, which are currently kind of in a separate area, which I'll show in a minute. And so some of the other kind of unique aspects of Hylo here is you can tag a post with multiple tags. And it's, it's sort of like Twitter hashtags, but a little bit more structured, sort of in between like Slack channels and Twitter hashtags. The other really exciting thing that is unique and that we are working on developing in really exciting ways is the ability to post a single post to multiple communities at the same time. And basically create a shared conversation or a shared resource or a request that goes out to a bunch of different communities instead of having to copy and paste it to a number of communities and have separate conversations. You can really create this kind of collaboration and connection that isn't possible in other platforms. You can also add a location, which I'll show in a moment on the map, and timeframes, and add images and attachments. And as an administrator of this group, I can sort of blast this post out as an announcement, which gets sent out via email and or push notification, depending on what people have set up for their individual notification settings. You can also make this post public, which is kind of a new thing that we added. There's this kind of separate section and map for public posts, something that we're going to be expanding on over time. And then, once you're in the stream, you can filter by specific post types, and sort by a few different options. We do have the ability to upvote, so you could sort by what's popular when there's the latest activity or when the post was created. Moving over to the left here, we can see right now we have this concept of projects that are really at the moment just another post type, with the only difference being that people can join or leave the project, so you kind of know who's working on this project. This is something we want to expand on and add kind of basic project management functionality over time. But right now, it's just kind of the beginning of that. Same with events. We have kind of the basics covered. You can invite people. You can see who's going. You can RSVP or say you're interested. We want to add like a calendar view of this and syncing with Google Calendar and all of that in the near future. We also have a membership directory where you can see everything that a person is involved in and their activity on the platform, as well as their links and profile data and the skills and interests that they have, as well as things that they're learning or wanting to learn. So you can kind of find each other this way. And we have a global search up here in the upper right, and so you can search posts and people by content or by tags or all different things here. And then that brings me to the map. or actually before I get there, you can also see over here on the left all the topics that I'm subscribed to in this community. And so if I click on a specific topic, it'll just show the posts that use that topic. And you can kind of go into the full list and see which topics you want to subscribe to or unsubscribe to and have easy access to. What else before I go to the map? I guess I can quickly show, here's like community settings. You can set a community as public and allow people to request to join that community if they find it. And you can see, the ability to invite people via link or email, set up the current moderators of the community, customize the topic list, or add kind of suggested topics that come up first for people, and see who's requesting to join the community. So the map, I'm actually going to move over to, this is a project we were working with the Bionutrient Food Association and various folks on. It's kind of still in progress. This is still, I wouldn't say this is fully launched to the world yet, but basically it was, they helped fund the map in Hylo. And so this is something that we built just this summer with the Bionutrient Food Association. And so we started populating this map of trying to get all, like basically farms and farmers markets in a map. And this is just the beginning of that, but I can show you what it looks like. You can navigate around and see the posts that are visible in the current map view over here on the right. You can filter by different topics, as well as different post types. You can jump to a specific location. You can also save a map view and kind of get updates, email updates about it, and be able to easily jump back to that in the future. So a lot of potential, a lot of power here. We're really excited about the mapping functionality for kind of place-based organizing. And we were just talking with Dan and Greg about next steps in ways that we might be able to integrate with FarmOS, which actually brings me to, well, I showed the profile, but you can see the ability to customize your profile. Hello. Come on, internet. This is odd. There we go. Yeah, setting up the different fields. The other thing I wanted to show in here is notifications, where you can get a daily digest or weekly digest of everything happening across all your groups and set up whether you want email notifications or push notifications or both for each of your communities. The other, well, and also you can see up here in the upper right, the notification drop down, kind of new things that you haven't read. We also do have a separate kind of chat interface where you can have individual and or group chats with people in all the communities you're a part of. The computer is struggling a little bit right now. Here we go. And then the last main feature I wanted to show is the navigation drawer. And so this is where you can see all the different communities I'm a part of. I'm a part of many communities because I'm helping people get set up here. And you can also see there's the ability to create networks of communities. And so people are using this in various ways, like the NorCal Resilience Network has different kind of working groups in here. But also, the idea with mycelia.earth was to use this ability to have all these different organizations and projects like the Real Food Campaign be a part of this this map, basically. And so this is something we are working on a lot to expand right now, the ability to create networks with groups inside. We're developing this further into a fully kind of fractal setup where you can have any number of groups inside of groups. And the idea is we want to really be able to reflect how groups collaborate in the real world. And so, you could have a company that has departments and teams and a sophisticated company structure, or a network or alliance that has many different organizations that are part of it. And organizations might want to join different networks. And so how do we actually create the infrastructure for collaboration and cooperation across the many different organizations and groups that are working together. And I know this is something that OpenTEAM is also thinking about. So we're really excited about that. We're building the next iteration of that right now with our current partnership with the Planetary Health Alliance, and that should be out in kind of January or February, and really allow for us to map kind of the full ecosystem of players that are doing good work in the world, and what their relationships are and how they're working together. Let's see, anything else I want to share about the current feature set? I think that's mostly it. Yeah, I mean, for the more technically minded, just to lay out the technical architecture, this is, as Claire mentioned, all open source. It's Node on the back end and React on the front end, and React Native for the mobile apps. We are, we have a small team working on this right now, and we're really excited to kind of build up the open source ecosystem of developers, and been having a lot of inbound excitement and requests to start getting involved. So that's a project that in the new year we're excited about. What else? I think, on the integrations front, there currently isn't much of an ability to integrate with Hylo, but all the APIs are using GraphQL, pretty standard at this point. We basically just need to work on the authentication piece to make it easier to pull data out of Hylo or push data into Hylo. And we're very excited to build all kinds of integrations, and would love to hear your ideas. Like I said, we were just talking with Greg about FarmOS integrations. Could we pull in kind of the data there into profiles for farms and farmers into Hylo? There would be a lot of like cool things we could do with that. What else? I think maybe I'll pause there and shift back over to Claire for kind of what the roadmap and what's coming next. And then, of course, happy to answer as many questions as you all have after that.
Yeah, thanks, Tibet. Okay. Just show this slide. So we have so much that we want to build. And this is kind of a rough estimate of things we'd like to do in the coming season. Tibet mentioned our partnership with the Planetary Health Alliance, which is really exciting for us. That is a group that is housed within the Harvard School of Public Health, and they are pioneering this field of planetary health that combines ecological awareness and public health. And they are longtime users of Hylo and wanted to work with us to expand Hylo's feature set as they do a really big push to bring their community more into online community. And they have hundreds of organizations around the world that are members. It's a very complex network. So we're going to be working with them over the next quarter to implement things that are already on our roadmap, which is the perfect way that we love to work. And then everyone using Hylo gets to benefit. So we have, we're improving the profiles that Tibet visited those briefly. We are building community discovery pages so that when a member of a community lands in that community, there's like, here's the newest posts, here's who's online, here's all the latest opportunities. So there's like a dashboard that you can kind of get oriented to what's alive in your community at that moment. Global directory just means like more enhanced search features. So we have the map, and that's a great search feature, but just making sure people can really see what's happening throughout the world. And then the holonic architecture piece that Tibet was talking about, that's this expansion of the structure of the groups. And so right now we have multiple communities can be part of one network. The holonic architecture is going to expand that a lot more. So basically a group can have many layers of children and can have many layers of parents, or have multiple parents and multiple children. And we really felt that was important because we didn't see that kind of architecture in any other collaboration app, but that's how we actually are as people and organizations and how we actually collaborate. So it's a really complex thing that we're working on, but we're really excited to make it real and facilitate that. Yeah, so then there's all kinds of good stuff we want to work on. But basically the way that we work, as we've touched on, is that we create aligned partnerships with groups that want to see these things come to Hylo. And yeah, that's kind of, but this is where we'd like to go. Tibet mentioned integrations, interoperability. There's a couple of interesting partnerships in the works or efforts in the works that might be relevant here. One is the Collaborative Tech Alliance, which Tibet works on and is actually rebooting right now, in order to make sure that all of the different groups that are building collaboration tools at this time are actually collaborating amongst themselves and making sure there's a shared schema and APIs that make sense, so that when people start working with any of these platforms, whether it's Hylo or something else, the members have sovereignty over their own data and can take their own data with them. Yeah, so just working to break down any possible silos that exist either in the platforms themselves or anywhere else. And the other is we're working on an effort to unite many different organizations that are interested in mapping the regenerative ecosystem and expanding the functionality of Hylo to even better map what's going on. So those are some of the things that we are working on from a partnerships perspective. And I would say as a product manager, things that I really want to see from Hylo in the coming year are I really want to do tests with communities that are dedicated to ecological restoration, like community-led restoration efforts, which we see a lot of in the Bay Area as like a post-wildfire thing, as well as local farms and local food distribution efforts, and really seeing whether Hylo can specifically serve those efforts. I personally really want to see Hylo serve the regenerative agriculture community and people that are doing the physical work of regeneration with the land. So the more that we can test out Hylo's functionality for those particular groups over the coming year, I'll be really happy to see that, because we just want to calibrate this as we go to really serve the needs of our community. Like, we are doing this as a gift for the regenerative movement. Yeah, just looking for partners that want to build that with us and participate. Tibet, anything else I should touch on?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you go to the next slide, like, we could talk a little bit about the structure and get, into the details. Like, right now we have a for-profit LLC as well as a nonprofit that's fiscally sponsored by our friends organization Empowerment Works, and both are involved in working on Hylo. As we mentioned, we've been mainly funded right now through partnerships. We also just did a crowdfunding campaign that will help give us a little more runway. And we're still, it's still like a beta. Like, we're still, there's still some rough edges. We have kind of early adopter communities that are using it, which are great. We have some wonderful organizations on there. But we're not quite ready to blast it out to the world and say, hey, everyone come use Hylo and move off Facebook yet. We feel like there's still some work to do, and just in terms of even the performance of it and bug fixing and getting it to a polished enough place where we feel really ready to tell everyone to come over. And yeah, I would say in the next year, some of the other things that we're trying to figure out are the ideal legal structure for Hylo. We think it needs to spin out into its own entity at some point, and really want it to be, a platform cooperative. So some amount of collective governance and ownership, and figuring out the right structure for that is something we've been thinking a lot about. We're also working on fundraising and really trying to bring in a big chunk of money that will give us the runway and enable us to build up the team and really get to where we want to go with it. Currently, the plan in terms of the business model is to keep it as a nonprofit and keep it free and fund it through donations. but really ask the people using the platform to give something, based on what they're getting from it, whether that's the organizations using it or individuals or both. We also have a plan to build in the ability to do transactions on the platform. So like crowdfunding for projects or organizations, event ticketing, membership subscription fees are something that a lot of people are asking for. Like we want to charge the members of our community something to be a part of it. And so anytime there's a transaction on Hylo, we'll ask for like a tip, add a tip to the platform. And so that's another way we are hoping to kind of fund it in the long run. And yeah, I think that's it. There's a lot of like really interesting topics we could dive into there as well about how do we collectively manage technology platforms and create this kind of tech commons. Yeah. Could leave it at that and just open it up.
Well, Laura, do you want to, we have our standard questions. It'd be great to just have a comment on, how you see, from your first take in terms of how you see this linking in, or what are the points of intersection with the OpenTEAM community. And I think that would be a good place to start. And then I always have, more than a dozen questions. But I want to make sure other folks have a chance to jump in after that.
Mm-hmm.
I could throw out a question or two as well. First off, I just wanted to say thanks so much for this really interesting presentation. The story is kind of cool to see how it's gone from a for-profit model to a non-profit open sourced model, and the things that you're considering building along the way. It's really interesting. And I'm just, we're just starting to have conversations about how the people in the landscapes that we at Tech Matters are serving are communicating. And I'm noticing that in these countries or these contexts, which are often developing countries, the same social networks that dominate in the US are dominant there. WhatsApp and Facebook are the place where communication and collaboration take place. And I'm curious how you envision at this point navigating that dynamic. Do you think you'll be integrating with these tools? Do you think you'll be trying to say, hey, actually our tool is better? What's the thinking at this point?
Go ahead, Claire.
No, you go. Go ahead.
Okay. We have a lot of problems with Facebook, as I think hopefully many of us do, if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma yet. And so I believe there is a desire and a need to move off of Facebook-owned platforms and move away from advertising-driven models where, it's based around selling your data and keeping you addicted to the platforms. Who knows, maybe WhatsApp will be broken out of Facebook again by the federal government, and that will be a good thing. But, at the same time, so I think there is a desire to create an alternative. At the same time, it's, really, really hard to compete with, these massive companies that have infinite resources. So we're trying to focus on what can we do that's unique and powerful now. And definitely we're pulling in people that want to move off of Facebook. And right now, Hylo is a serviceable Facebook group replacement, and we'll just keep getting better. But I think the piece that we're working on around like intergroup collaboration and coordination and kind of mapping the ecosystem of communities and being able to cross-post, like that's something that's unique that we don't really see Facebook doing, and I think is a powerful set of features that we think is needed for the kind of global coordination and cooperation that has to happen right now. So we're kind of starting there. I think that the piece about chat and WhatsApp and the fact that so many people use those because it's really fast, it doesn't use much data, they're encrypted, like all of that is really great. And we would like to replicate that in the chat aspect of Hylo at some point, and that could potentially involve using other open source projects. That's something we're thinking about, but it's not kind of immediate on our roadmap. So yeah, there's a desire to replace Facebook over time eventually, and it will require a huge effort with a lot of people involved.
And I'll just say, I think your focus on interoperability and collaboration with other platforms is probably going to be really important in that effort, because if there's alternative standards that people are adopting, you don't need to, become the one thing that everybody goes to. You could unify with a bunch of other standards out there or other platforms.
Yeah, and there's actually a Hylo group called the Collaborative Tech Alliance that we're kind of it started also a few years ago, and we're trying to bring it back to life, which is a bunch of different platforms with similar values, working on similar things, trying to come together and create interoperable protocols and standards and potentially even merge efforts. So that's a really exciting thing. Be happy to invite anyone to that community as well.
Yeah, I want to respond to Dorn's question. I feel like, Tibet, you covered that one really well, about how this might play with the OpenTEAM ecosystem, which we're just getting to know. But when I think about all of these different edges that are pulling in agricultural data from the farmers, and then there's ideas about how to display it, the thing that I haven't heard much of is, okay, we display this data, but then what happens next? How can the farmers then be in community with each other? Or how can general eaters of the world be in community with those farmers? Like, what do we do with this data? And what's the substrate that allows us to take those actions? And so that's where I can see Hylo really coming into this potentially. Yeah, as Tibet mentioned, we were just chatting with Greg Ostick and Dan Kittredge about this, because we've been working with the Bionutrients Food Association on this. Having a place where the farmers have profiles and the data, whatever data they might feel like sharing with the public, whatever credentials they've earned or whatever proof they have of their regenerative outcomes, being able to display that on their profile and share it, both with other farmers, and then being able to have conversations with other farmers about successes and challenges and learnings, like that would be so powerful. And then also with the public, right? And have a place where farmers can be potentially in community with the people who are buying their food and products that they make. And really just creating more relationships around regenerative agriculture as a way to scale this movement. Yeah, so that if Hylo plugged in as that piece, that would be really cool.
Yeah, Claire, I'm really glad you brought up those conversations. I feel like connected with the on the ground action, because there's a lot of those conversations. I think we haven't had there's been a missing piece in the puzzle, so we can visualize the data, but then have the inspiration that comes from connecting with one another as we decide what to do and why. And I'm really thrilled, as Derek mentioned, about the interoperability, and particularly around these sharing conversations across platforms. It's something that I feel like we've been struggling with for years, with these communities that are aligned, but who maintain separate forums, and we have to link cross forums. And and we can do it. We've been doing it, even if they're all in Discord or discourse rather. But I feel I'd love to hear maybe a little bit on your approach, because if we're in a transition, so within OpenTEAM, for example, I know we're on Riot and Matrix and Slack and Discord and Teams and Basecamp, and there's Food TBD. And what is the transition? Not to mention Facebook and others, and they all have different pieces and different pieces of the puzzle. I would just maybe hear a little bit about how we manage some of the alignment, and how much is shifting platforms and how much is interoperability. And not that you have the answer, but just that I feel like it's an exciting moment to be having a lot of the folks in each of these organizations have a chance to actually take some action there. And I'll just mention right off the bat, so some of the organizations like FarmHack and like Public Lab and Gosh and Goat, all of which are sort of the foundation of OpenTEAM and and Real Food Campaign and some of these others, we still have these siloed conversations. So I feel like there is a really exciting opportunity if we start to have a pathway here to take action. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most frustrating things about trying to collaborate or create a bigger effort that crosses organizations, is that there are very few shared spaces. It typically either requires members of one organization joining the other organization's Slack team or something like that. And so that's one of the biggest goals with this holonic architecture that we're building. And the architecture, in fact, as it exists already, is that you can create one conversation that goes to multiple different communities and multiple people can participate in that one place without having to even leave your own section of the tool.
Does that function a little bit like the bridge between, say, Riot Matrix and Slack, or sort of cross post? Is it different than sort of a plugin? Just curious.
I'm not familiar with that technology, so I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
That's something that you know about?
Yeah, I mean, it's different than like cross posting to another platform, right? Because it's built in one place. It's like creating this like shared conversation and collaboration amongst all of the people in all those communities. And so I mean, you could say it's kind of similar, but it also feels like a little bit more.
And perhaps a bridge, I guess, is what we're looking for. So as we can maintain the legacy platforms and then work towards common conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think matrix bridges are amazing, and we would love to have that functionality available with Hylo as well. There's a lot on our roadmap, so yeah.
Is Matrix part of the tech collaborative?
They're not actually at this point, as far as I know. But there was a bunch of people involved.
Great.
And I'm just starting to kind of bring it back to life. The conversations that we have queued up over the next few weeks. There's one about creating shared kind of ethical user agreements in terms of service, and how do we do that across platforms and maybe have a standard. There's one about standardizing user profile schemas, so to make it easier to potentially have people move back and forth between platforms. And there's one about the data structure and schema and architecture of the group to group connections, what we were calling our holonic architecture, and how do we standardize that.
I want to give other folks a chance, but I would love to come back to the rich user profiles, that architecture in a second.
So I'm sorry, I was kind of multitasking during your presentation, but what I saw was really interesting. And I wanted to get back to what Derek mentioned. Is this primarily looking at developed countries, or are you also looking at like the global south as well?
I mean, I'd say right now first of all, it's only in English. We don't have different languages yet. And there's still work to do on the kind of performance piece in terms of making it fast and use less data. And so I would say it's not like, I would say in its current state, it's not really as useful for the global south. But that is certainly a goal for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, one of the use cases that we've heard a lot of interest for in Latin America is if there's something that could connect like a farm operations tool such as FarmOS or Light Farm, and hook up kind of your harvests directly with a marketplace where you could then sell, right? So like Light Farm has really, really basic functionality around understanding market prices when it comes to crops. But our farmers are always talking about like, if you can offer us a better way to sell, that's that's like high on their list. So it was really exciting when I saw the map portion and the number of farms and presumably like farmers markets. I know there's a lot of demand out there, and that would be something that we'd be really interested in having a conversation about.
Yeah, that's definitely a dream, and it's something we've been working towards with our work with Bionutrient Food Association and a number of people we've been talking to. This is like a primary use case that we are excited to support, and the conversation we were just having right before this meeting as well, about integration with FarmOS.
Well, and then I think the vision, FarmOS started more as a commerce platform and moved towards management. And I feel like it's been excited to see others like, the Open Food Network start to pick up some of that community food distribution visualization. So I was really excited to see that on your roadmap, and then see what we can do to sort of amplify some of those efforts as well. Because I think early on, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we talked with the Open Food Network about how FarmOS would fit into that. So there's that handoff between production and sort of commerce, and it's really fluid, and it really needs to have this support that complex. So community sort of aggregation, value-added production has really complex data types and types of transactions. So I was excited to see that on your roadmap. The other thing I wanted to, and I think that comes back to something that we've been noticing a lot as a common theme within OpenTEAM, is that so many of the questions that we're asking, we have this general idea of asking, or Kevin shares in this, asking fewer questions, and then obviously using the answers many, many times. But part of that is that I feel like our user profiles, whether it's in commerce or whether it's in projects or whether it's about our interests or geography, all of those things in terms of how we present ourselves answer so many questions. And I feel some having that common structure, linking that to our survey stack and FarmOS integration would serve could be a very powerful foundation for onboarding and reducing the burden of our producers, and having something that they can then steward, and that data that is theirs in perpetuity. It's not something we're maintaining, but something that sort of helps them work through this, access the ecosystem effectively. So that's why I really wanted to come back to that at some point, because I think it's something we at OpenTEAM, our user profiles could do so much more. And they're distributed across right now between GitLab and WordPress and in Discord and so forth. And it's a real struggle. I think Laura put that in our chat. As we're mapping, that's a lot of what we're mapping is actually those profiles. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a lift as a person joining a platform to report all these things and like to do that initial onboarding. And so we definitely only want people to have to do that one time, right? And then share that as much as possible across the relevant platforms that are working together. And this also came up in the conversation we were having just before this, like how great would it be if a farmer arrives at Hylo, or let's say a farmer fills out that onboarding, the unified OpenTEAM onboarding survey and survey stack, and then they get their invitation to join Hylo, and their platform is already created using that data that they've already filled out. And then on their profile, they have their hexagons from Regen 1, and they have all the whatever they'd like to be sharing. It's just all there. Like, that would be pretty cool.
Ideally, maybe it's not just shared at point of enrollment, but it's synchronized in an ongoing way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because you're building in the ability to, and this is kind of what we got at with a little bit in our all hands meeting, is decommodify our transactions. So we can really customize what we're sharing with whom at a very granular level. And I think that's the exciting thing, because that can be projects, it can be financial transactions, it can be conversations, and different levels of sharing within those conversations, I think is one of the things that we all struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But I would
I think there's just. Oh,
go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say the big fish here is like common login, which doesn't have to be done in the traditional way. It can be done in a variety of ways, but it's a real problem that no one in OpenTEAM right now wants to solve or is even motivated to solve, given their set of goals and needs. So it feels like a real sensible place to start.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, there is a platform that we have had a bunch of conversations with about interoperability. It's called True.net, and they are the approach we were going to take is just using the standard DIDs that have been developed by the W3C, Internet Standards bodies for distributed identifiers, to say that like a Hylo login could be a DID and a True.net login could be a DID, and then whoever, if someone signs up on one of them first, there would be an option to basically say also like log in or sign into Hylo with my True.net profile, or vice versa. And then the guy who's developed this platform has also built this thing called JLink, which I'll post here, which we would use for then sharing data across the services and having the profiles basically stay in sync. So this is a currently available solution that we're exploring with DIDs and JLink. There's also, of course, the hope that we mentioned earlier that Holochain kind of solves all of this for us in the next year, and creates the distributed internet of the future with a shared user identity and profile data where users have full control over it and decide what data to share with which applications and which people. And so that's kind of the hope, that we don't have to solve this infrastructure issue and someone else does, and we can just use either Holochain or Tim Berners-Lee's Solid platform, or one of these, like, there's a bunch of people working on this, right? And so we're actually more interested in focusing on the feature set and functionality for enabling more collaboration and cooperation within and between groups, and not trying to like solve the sovereign identity piece. Right. But we're involved in that conversation as well.
Do you see do you see those same solutions being applicable to members of OpenTEAM and kind of solving some of our problems as well? And if so, like, could you shepherd us through that process? As you seem more informed than we are, I think. I mean, I've heard of those things, but I don't keep up with them.
Yeah, definitely happy to continue to inform or share what I am learning, and because we're going to be in an ongoing process of figuring out what's the best strategy for this as well. So definitely happy to continue sharing that and having that conversation.
One more quick comment. We're getting close to the top of the hour, but I wanted to hear a bit more about your, and maybe you've had some of these conversations with Greg already, but just I'm really interested in sort of the documentation and observation tools. So it's very much like sort of the Instagram function. As we're in the field, both the conversations related to documentation, and so we're particularly interested in, from on environmental observations, but it's also management and tools like that we're actually using in the environment and getting that context. And so certainly we're tackling that some with our protocols and some of what SurveyStack is doing, but wonder just your thoughts or tools that you already have in mind to capture the conversation and facilitate the sharing, not only of the words, but the images and observations that are, that we gather as we're, going about work in the shop or in the lab or in the field or in the woods.
I don't know that we have talked specifically about that idea very much. I mean, we have the concept of resources in Hylo that I think, is kind of meant to be used for kind of permanent, documents, videos, images, things that we want to be able to find and find over time and organize in some way. And so thinking about how that could turn into kind of a resource library. I don't know, Claire, do you have more thoughts? And I'm intrigued to talk about what that could look like more.
Yeah, I mean, any post can be a photo and a comment can also be a photo. So there's that. But yeah, I'd love to hear like a user story about this use case to understand how we might.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that OpenTEAM has a lot of different tools that are essentially working on that level, but don't have the conversational piece, or where it's, and so it's, say, LandPKS is documenting a series of protocols in the field, structured observations. We're going through a similar process with a number of, survey stacks for in-field protocols. We've talked about for years a project documentation tool for FarmHack to easily document a tool or a hack that you just did and to comment on it. So those are some of the I think it would be a matter of like, how do we sort of build on those cases and the tools that exist and then pick up on exactly what you've been talking about, is like, how do we then have the conversation that furthers that carries on the inspiration, that allows people to thank people for their contributions and so forth. Well, I see we're at the top of the hour, but I wanted to really thank you both so much for sparking this conversation and all the work that is, I think we see great relevance for this community as we, within the GOAT and OpenTEAM communities, as we move forward to help continue to explore how we use these powerful tools to further our shared goals. So thank you again, and really looking forward to the conversations as they emerge and further our collaborations.
Yeah.
Thank
Sounds
you.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks
For
everyone.
having us.
Thanks, guys.
Talk more soon.
Thank
All right.
you.